The afternoon sun hung low over the crowded streets of Manila, turning the dust into gold. Amid the chaos of vendors shouting and jeepneys honking, a faint melody floated through the noise, soft at first, then rising with quiet strength. It came from a barefoot boy standing by a cracked lamppost, clutching a battered microphone connected to a second-hand speaker. His name was Rico, 12 years old, thin as bamboo, but with eyes that carried the depth of the ocean. People hurried past him, office workers, students, mothers balancing baskets of fruit. Some tossed coins into his tin can without looking. Others barely noticed him at all. But Rico sang on. His voice trembled at first, then soared, raw and pure, filling the air with something you couldn't buy or fake. It wasn't just a song, it was a prayer, a confession, a dream whispered to the sky. Behind that voice was a story no one saw. A small shack by the river, a mother fighting sickness, and nights spent wondering if tomorrow's meal would come. Yet, when he sang, Rico didn't sound broken. He sounded free, like each note was lifting him above the weight of his world. For Rico, music wasn't about money or fame. It was survival. It was the only way to tell the world, I'm still here. I still believe. And though few stopped to listen, those who did felt something stir inside them, something they hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. As the sun dipped below the rooftops, Rico's voice carried through the evening air, soft, soulful, aching with something pure. Most people kept walking, but one woman stopped. Her name was Claire, an American tourist with a camera slung around her neck and a heart open enough to hear what others missed. She stood frozen, her eyes glistening as Rico's voice rose above the noise of the street. When the song ended, she walked up and dropped a few bills into his can. But instead of leaving, she knelt beside him. You have an amazing gift, she said softly. Rico looked down, shy and uncertain. Thank you, ma'am, he whispered, his accent gentle, his eyes tired yet bright. They talked for a while. Claire learned he sang every day after school, or what was left of school, to help buy medicine for his sick mother. Sometimes, he barely earned enough for rice. Yet there was no bitterness in his voice, only quiet faith. Claire felt a lump rise in her throat. She turned on her phone's camera. Would you mind singing again? She asked. Rico hesitated, then nodded. As he began, his song filled the air once more, this time, captured forever. When he finished, Claire said, the world needs to hear you, Rico. He smiled, not quite believing her. But that night, she posted his video online with a simple caption. This boy's voice will touch your soul. Neither of them knew it yet, but that moment would change everything. 3 days later, the morning in Manila began like any other. Humid air, the smell of fried fish, the sound of tricycles sputtering by. Rico hurried to the small internet cafe down the street, clutching 10 pesos in his hand. The owner, amused by the boy's daily visits, let him watch for free that day. As the computer screen flickered to life, Rico froze. His face was everywhere. His video, the one Claire had taken, was on YouTube, Facebook, even TV clips on the cafe's old monitor. The title read, Poor Filipino Boy's Soulful Singing Shakes the World. He clicked play. His own voice poured from the speakers, clear, trembling, beautiful. But this time, there were millions listening. The comments flooded in from around the world. I'm crying. This boy has a gift from heaven. How can we help him? Rico didn't understand how it happened. Just days ago, he was invisible. Now, strangers from places he'd never heard of were calling him an inspiration. His hands shook as he scrolled, eyes wide with disbelief and tears. He ran home, breathless, shouting for his mother. She sat up weakly on their small bed as he told her everything. For the first time in years, she smiled without effort. See, Anik, she whispered, her voice thin but proud. Your song finally found its wings. Outside, the street still looked the same, but for Rico, the world had just opened its heart. Months later, the lights of Los Angeles shimmered like stars come to earth. Backstage at a grand charity concert hall, Rico stood barefoot, clutching the same battered microphone he once held on a Manila street corner. Around him, cameras flashed, producers whispered, and famous singers prepared for their turn, but all he could hear was the quiet thump of his own heartbeat. Claire stood beside him, smiling gently. You ready? She asked. He nodded, though his hands trembled. I'll try, ma'am, he said softly. That's all you've ever needed to do, she replied. The stage doors opened. A wave of applause rolled toward him as he stepped into the spotlight, tiny, barefoot, and awestruck. The crowd fell silent. Then, the music began. Rico closed his eyes. His voice rose, delicate, trembling, then powerful, each note carrying every moment of struggle, love, and faith he had ever known. The grand theater seemed to fade, replaced by the familiar streets of Manila, his mother's smile, the sound of rain on tin roofs. People in the audience wiped tears from their eyes. Some clasped their hands together, others simply stared, unable to look away. By the time the final note fell into silence, the crowd stood as one, cheering, crying, clapping for the boy whose voice had broken every barrier. Rico bowed deeply, tears glistening. For the first time, he didn't feel poor or small. He felt seen. He felt free. And somewhere in the front row, Claire whispered, "You did it, Rico. You touched the world." Months later, the air in Manila smelled of rain and new beginnings. The little riverside shack where Rico once sang was no longer falling apart. It stood stronger now, freshly painted, filled with laughter instead of worry. His mother, now healthy, hummed as she cooked rice, her eyes glimmering with peace she hadn't known in years. Rico had returned home, not as a star, but as a son. The concert had raised more money than he could imagine. He used it first to pay for his mother's treatment, then to rebuild homes in their neighborhood that the last typhoon had destroyed. Every coin, every dollar sent by strangers around the world became food, medicine, and hope for families who had nothing. When reporters came asking about fame, Rico only smiled. "The stage was beautiful," he said, "but this is where my song belongs." And every afternoon, he would gather the neighborhood children and teach them to sing, their voices rising together over the same dusty streets that once carried his dreams. One evening, as the sun sank behind the city skyline, Rico looked up and whispered, "Thank you, to the wind, to Claire, to the world, to every heart that had listened." The world had given him a stage. He gave it back in kindness. And though his song had begun on a forgotten street corner, it had ended in millions of hearts, proving that sometimes, the poorest voice carries the richest soul.